It's often said that those who dare are never truly defeated. The foundation of every triumph lies in self-belief, courage, and relentless effort. Those who possess all these things, they are never defeated in life, and this story is also something like that. The time was 1917. In the city of South Dakota, a 17-year-old boy, Will Stoneman, is shown. Will delivers mail by dog sleds, and alongside that, he assists his father with his carpentry work. They also have a firm. One day, Will receives a letter, and this letter is from a college. Actually, Will has been given the opportunity to study at the college where he always wanted to study. But now, Will doesn't want to go to college because he knows that his family needs him. When Will's father hears about it, he becomes very happy and hugs Will tightly from his heart. Will tells him, "I know that you cannot afford the college fees for me, so I don't want to go to college." Will's father tells him, "You don't need to worry about all this. You should strive to fulfill your dreams." Afterwards, they both return home, and outside the house, it is shown that Will's father has a dog named Gus. When Will attempts to reach out to Gus, he comes to bite him. Will is told that Gus is fiercely loyal and only recognizes one master for his entire life. Inside the house, Will's dad is looking at a brochure for dogsled racing. It's a very long and dangerous race, but whoever wins this race will receive $10,000. The race will start from Winnipeg, Tobago in Canada, and it will end in St. Paul in Minnesota. The entire race is 522 miles long. If someone even completing the arduous 522-mile journey of this race would be a remarkable achievement in its own right. Although Will's father wants to participate in this race, but he cannot go due to his responsibilities and the consequences it may have on them. One day, Will and his dad were bringing wood from the jungle on their sled. The load was very heavy, especially the wood that is on Will's father's sled. Here, the path is very up and down, and suddenly his sled jumps and falls into the water. Even though he tries, but he cannot get out from the water, because his feet are trapped in the sled, and all his dogs are tied to the sled. Now, his sled is sinking in the water, so his dogs are being pulled along, and just then Will arrives there, and he tries to pull his father out by pulling the rope. But the weight is so heavy that even though he wants to, he cannot do it. And now he also starts slowly going towards the water. Will's dad understands the situation and realizes that besides cutting the rope, there is no other way for him. Therefore, to save his dogs, he cut the rope and sinks into the water. Will's dad passed away, and this matter completely shatters Will. He knows he can't even go to college now. But his mom wants him to go to college, so she decides that she'll sell all the dogs and even Gus, the beloved dog of Will's late father. Upon hearing this, Will gets really angry and he says that maybe studies are not written in his destiny. In fact, after selling all the dogs, their second debt will also decrease to some extent. Then Will left from there. The next morning, when Will wakes up, he finds the same brochure in front of him. The brochure displays details about a 522-mile race, where the winner will receive $10,000. Upon seeing this, Will gets extremely excited. He goes to his mom and says, "I want to participate in this race." But his mom firmly declines, saying that, "I have just lost my husband, and now I don't want to lose my son either." Will then goes to his uncle and says to him, "After the death of my dad, all my dreams shattered. I have nothing left to pursue. But now, I have a hope. If I win this race, our debts will be paid off, and I'll also be able to go to college." His uncle says, "The race is starting in 1 month, and you're not ready for it." Will replies, "I'll get ready for it." His uncle insists, "But not in 1 month." Will tells his mom, "After Dad's passing, I don't feel alive anymore, nor I can't feel him. Dad also wanted to win this race, and by winning it, I want to keep him alive within me forever." His mom leaves from there, but at night she visits his uncle's place and asks him, "Is it possible?" Will's uncle goes straight to Will's room where Will is sleeping. He wakes him up and escorts him out of the house. Outside, it's bitterly cold, and Will's training has already begun. Will's uncle doesn't show much enthusiasm. He tells him, "You need to rest as little and move as much as you can." Here, Will slowly starts to make friend with his dad's dog, who initially kept his distance from Will. After a month of rigorous training, Will is now prepared to go for the race. However, just before he sets out, his mom says, "Forget about the $10,000 prize. I only want my son back. I don't want to lose my son." Afterwards, Will sets out for the race with his dogs, reaching the place where everyone has gathered for the race. Everyone participating in this race is a champion, and they are also quite mature in age. The guy in charge of this race is Mr. Harper, a wealthy man. Will goes up to him and says, "I'm here for the race." Because when they were calling out all the contestants' names, Will's name wasn't mentioned. Will says he paid $50 for this race, and when they check the list, they see his name. They remark that he is still very young. Mr. Harper then asks him, "Why you want to participate in the race?" Will responds, "For the $10,000 prize." Hearing this, everyone present starts laughing. Mr. Harper doesn't want Will to participate because he knows there's a danger to life in this race. So he asks Will how much money he has. Will replies, $2. Mr. Harper says, "You filled the form late, and the fine amount is $10. Will says, "I have $2, and I'll give you the rest of the money after winning the race." Here, there's a newspaper reporter named Kingsley who says he will give Will $10. Actually, he does this so that he can get a good headline for his newspaper. Here, the other racers also agree to let Will participate. They think Will won't last more than a day, and now, Will is also part of this race. The next day, the race begins, and all the racers sit atop their sleds, aiming for their destination and setting off. Nobody has faith in Will. They all believe he won't last more than a day in the race. But Will shows tremendous enthusiasm here. He repeatedly gets off his sled and pushes it forward while running to ensure that his sled moves ahead of everyone else. Indeed, the route of this entire race is alongside the railway track, so Mr. Harper, along with Mr. Kingsley, the newspaper reporter who had given Will the $10, they all sit in the train and watching their race and moving ahead. And they are all amazed to see Will leading the race. Now, when all the other racers are pushing their sleds forward, there is an accident occurs on one of the slides. But, luckily he man survived. After that, another sled crashes, where Will's sled collides with the sled of the man. Although he had commanded his dogs, but Gus was still not following his commands properly. After this, they continue advancing, and after a whole day's journey, when night falls, everyone stops at a place where the train has halted. It's the same train where Mr. Harper, Mr. Kingsley, and many other people are traveling with the race. But Will wakes up before the light of daybreak because his uncle told him, "If you want to win this race, you need to sleep less." He gets his sled ready for the race. Just then, the news reporter Kingsley arrives there. He asks Will, "Where are you heading?" Will replies, "Perhaps the weather's going to turn bad. I want to stay ahead of the game." As Will eats something here, Kingsley asks him, "What are you eating?" Will says, "I'm having fruitcake." Upon hearing this, Kingsley is surprised and says, "You want to cover the next 40 miles after eating fruitcake?" Will says, "My mom made it, it's special fruitcake. And besides, I don't want to waste time to setting fires and cooking." Saying this, Will leaves from there. Kingsley then writes an article for his newspaper. He writes that there is an American boy in this race who is racing against nature, against humans, and against time. He only eats fruitcake made by his mom. He's a true American hero. But his article doesn't make it to the front page of the newspaper because it's the time of the World War I, and all the news is about the war on the front page. Kingsley is very disappointed because he wanted Will's story to be on the front page. On the other hand, as Will moves forward, he encounters a frozen lake. It reminds him of the time when his father drowned in the water. Therefore, Will decides to take a different path, where he cannot go by sledding. Now he starts walking forward by foot. Will gets so tired that he falls asleep right on his sled. Here, his father's smartest dog Gudge notices that Will is not waking up. Therefore, he himself starts moving forward. On the other hand, as night falls, it is shown that one by one all the racers reach the train. Here, the cold is intense, so everyone's condition is worsens. But Will does not reach there. Everyone thinks either Will is lost or he's dead. But shortly after, Gudge reaches there by pulling the sled along with Will. Even though Will is still asleep on his sled, but Gudge wakes him up by licking his face. But Kingsley notices him and everyone comes out, and they take Will inside. Will is in bad shape, but he doesn't want to give up. Although it's tough, he doesn't want to surrender. A racer tells him, "You should go back, otherwise you'll die." But Will is determined to win this race at any cost. Therefore, the next morning, he is the first to leave with his sled and his dogs. As he progresses, he notices that there is a racer lying there. Actually, this racer didn't return to the train last night. He was continuously moving, and now he's fallen ill. If Will leaves this man here, he will die, so he gently places him on his sled and takes him near the railway track. Shortly after, their train arrives, and the man is taken inside the train. He tells them that Will Stoneman saved me. Mr. Harper, who is the sponsor of the entire race, he is very impressed. He says, "This boy's heart is like a bear's. By saving this man's life, he expended a lot of energy, he could have died himself." Here, another man says, "I'm betting $5,000, Will won't make it to the end of this race." Mr. Harper says, "Alright, I accept your bet." Here, Will is shown resting on the way with his dogs, and when he looks for his whistle to urge them forward, he realizes he doesn't have it. The whistle is lost somewhere. Actually, it's his dad's whistle. After blowing it, his dogs move forward. It's a kind of signal for them to moving forward. Now, since he doesn't have a whistle, he starts making whistle sounds with his mouth, and his dogs begin to move forward. On the other hand, it's also shown that Will has saved the life of one of his companions, so his picture appears on the front page in newspaper. Along with this, a new name also given to him, and that is Iron Will. Reporters even reach his home to inform his mom about how he's continuously advancing towards his destination. He sleeps minimally, and he eats only fruitcake given by his mother. Will's mom is overjoyed to hear this. The man who had bet $5,000 that Will can't complete his race. That man approaches one of the racers. He tells him that at any cost, Will must be eliminated from the race. The racer says, "I'll take care of your job." The next day, he follows Will and sets his fierce dog upon Will's dogs. Will's lead dog engages in a fight with the dog, but the opponent proves to be much stronger and inflicts severe injuries. In the evening, Will reaches the place where all the racers gather, and he confronts the racer who had set his vicious dog upon him. Will punches him, and a fight breaks out between them. Will aims his gun at him and says, "From now on, if you come near my dogs again, I'll shoot you." Just then, Mr. Harper arrives there and everything calms down. Kingsley, the newspaper reporter, is also present there. He is trying to show sympathy to Will, but Will also punches him because he comes to know that Kingsley is just using him for his headline. Additionally, he sends news reporters to Will's house, which worries his mom even more. Will then walks away from there, and when he was sitting with his dogs, that's when Ned Dodd comes to him. Ned Dodd, the same guy who had bet $5,000 that Will can't complete this race. He tells Will, "You should drop out of this race, I'll give you $3,000. But Will refuses to accept such an offer, and the next day, he continues his journey ahead. Many days have passed since the race began, and when Will passes through a town, he is welcomed by many people. He is also shown newspaper where his news is on the front page. It says, Iron Will aims to win this race to protect his home and ensure his future. Additionally, there is news about how he saved his companion's life. Will asks, "Who is Iron Will?" He is told that your new name is Iron Will, and you are a new hope for America. You inspire everyone to keep moving forward. Will is very happy upon hearing this. After completing a day's journey, Will reaches a place where his destiny awaits him. Will is extremely exhausted, he is injured, and his condition is not such that he can continue his race. But he wants to complete this race at any cost. Here, once again, Ned approaches Will and offers him $5,000 instead of $3,000, asking him to drop out of the race. Will refuses to comply with that, and when Ned is trying to intimidate him, Mr. Kingsley steps in from behind, and he tells to Ned, "If you say one more word, tomorrow's newspaper will expose all your misdeeds." And he pushed him away from there. Actually, Kingsley now also genuinely wants Will to win this race, and now, all the animosity between these two has been completely resolved. And before the next morning arrives, Kingsley comes to Will. He tries to wake him up, but Will is so exhausted that he can't even lift himself from the bed. Kingsley says, "I'll call the doctor." Will responds, "No, I must finish this race." He somehow gets out of bed with Kingsley's help, and before dawn breaks, he set out for his destination. And when Ned Dodd came to know about this, he is completely shaken. He wakes up all the racers in the dark and says that the boy has left. Afterwards, all the racers went out in the darkness. While Will is passing through the jungle in the darkness, he collides with a tree and falls down. But he doesn't give up, he keeps moving forward relentlessly. As dawn breaks, all the racers pass Will and surge into the destination. Then, the racer whose vicious dog injured Will's dog, he approaches Will. He tells Will that if you want to win the race, you need to take a shortcut from this point, and that path passed over a frozen lake. Actually, this path is just like that, the same kind of path where his father lost his life. And throughout the journey, whenever such a path appeared before him, he avoided it. But now, Will couldn't understand what he should do, and the racer ahead of him takes the shortcut path. Just then Will's injured dog, which was lying on the sled, starts barking at the racer who just took the shortcut. Will recalls his uncle's advice to trust himself and his dogs. Gudge stands up and Will realizes that Gudge can now pull the sled. So he then tied Gudge in front of the sled. After that, his loyal dogs take him through the same shortcut route. The other racer who took the shortcut, he is severely beating his dogs, and his dogs became enraged and launched an attack on him. And the dogs proceeded ahead with the empty sled, indicating that the racer is now out of the race, and Will continues to forge ahead relentlessly. On the other side, it is also shown that at the final destination where every racer is supposed to arrive, there, all the organizers, news reporters, Will's mom, his uncle, and everyone else are waiting eagerly for them. Then the entire crowd is informed that only 2 racers are coming, but Will is not among them. Every person presents their they all wishes for Will to win this race. and in the next moment, Will is seen coming out of the jungle. Because of the shortcut route, Will was way ahead of the rest of the racers. Will was extremely exhausted, so much so that he falls down before reaching the finishing line. Upon seeing this, the audience seated there is completely astonished. Then Will's uncle starts whistling, which encourages Will's dogs to move forward. After listening to the whistle, everyone sitting here starts playing a similar tune, which gives Will courage, and he stands up to fix his sled and slowly begins to move forward. The other two racers also came from behind, and now they are all equal. Will once again ignites the passion within himself. Just before either of the two racers touches the finishing line, Will leans forward and touches the finishing line first. In this way, Will wins the race. Will's mom approaches him and embraces him tightly, and with this, the true story comes to an end right here. The true story of Will Stone's life teaches us that if a person has the passion in their heart to move forward and self-confidence in themselves, they can accomplish not just a 522-mile journey, but even longer journeys with ease. By winning this race, Will not only changed his and his family's lives but also during a time when the World War I was ongoing and hopes was fading from people's hearts, he instilled a glimmer of hope in their lives. He awakened in them the belief that if a person has the passion and confidence, they can overcome even the greatest challenges with ease. Will's life has influenced many people's lives. Moreover, the people who don't contribute anything to others' lives, they often lead meaningless lives. This movie was released in 1994 and has a rating of 6.6 on IMDb. So friends, we hope you enjoyed this true story.